So let's create a class that will work with the DB context. And I can add it to the models. I'll right-click models, add new class, and I'll call it song context. Now in order to have this work with the DB context that specifies how we communicate with the database, we're simply going to inherit from DB context. When I hover over DB context, you can see the IntelliSense is quite extensive, but basically DB context is an instance that is used to query the entities in the database. There is more to it than that, but for us, that's what we are going to be using it for. So first, let's create a constructor for this class. And the constructor will expect the DB context options. Remember, the DB context options have the configurations for the DB context object. So we need those in order to configure our context. So we will pass in DB context options for our song context. And I'll call it options. Now we are inheriting from the DB context, so I'm going to pass these options back to the base class. So we'll do the base and pass the options to it. So this way the configuration will happen on the base class. And we don't need anything inside the constructor at all. We simply need to pass the options to the base class. That's why we had to create the constructor. Now we created an entity for the songs, so we now can create a DB set for the songs. Remember, the DB set is a collection of objects created from the specified entity. In our case, the entity is the songs. So we will have a list of all songs basically from the database in our DB set. So let's create public DB set for our song entity. And I'll call it songs. I'll call it songs as plural because this is basically a list, it's a collection. And let's make get and set. So this is a property. So when I hover over DB set, again, the IntelliSense is quite extensive, but you can see that DB set can be used to query and save instances of the entity. So we will be able to use link queries against the DB set. So this is the only property that we need so far. But we need one more method here, and that is the onModelCreating. OnModelCreating method is called by the framework when the context is created. So we will use it to enter some sample data into our database. Otherwise, we would just create a database with tables, but with no data in it. So let's create the method, and we are going to override it. So let's make it protected, override, and it doesn't return anything. And the method is onModelCreating. And here we will pass in a class called ModelBuilder. ModelBuilder provides a simple API service to configure the entity framework metadata. Basically, this is gonna help us to assign values to the fields in the database. So let's pass in the ModelBuilder, and I'll call it ModelBuilder. And I'm going to add the entity for the songs. So we'll go to our ModelBuilder argument, and we will call the entity from it. And the entity that we want, of course, is song. And we are going to indicate that we want to add data. To do that, we will use hasData. HasData configures this entity to have the seed data. That's what we want. We want to add some data to our properties or to the fields in the database. So we are going to create new instances of the song. Let's say, let's add 3 songs to our database and populate the properties of each. So let's create a new instance of song. And you can see we have the properties that we need. So first is the song ID. And I told you that the entity framework will create IDs for the songs that we create. However, we are overriding it here. We want to create sample data, so we need to add our own IDs here. After this, when we create the records from our application, the entity framework will create its own IDs. So this one's gonna be first song, so let's make it ID 1. The name of the song can be Master of Puppets. The year, which I don't remember what year it was released, but let's say it's 1980. The rating, I like this song, so let's make it 5. And that's really all that we need, except I forgot the quotes over here. So that is our first song. Now let's add another. So it's gonna be new song. So this is gonna be song ID equals 2. The name can be, let's say, Wonderwall by Oasis. The year, again, I don't remember, but let's say 1990. And a rating, I like this song, but in this case, let's make it, let's say, 4. And let's add one more, so it's gonna be new song. And it's gonna be song ID equals 3. Then we have the name, let's say Lose Yourself by Eminem. Year, I don't know, was it 2005 or something like that? And rating, it's a good song, I like it, but I'll give it a rating of 1 for our purposes. Alright, so we have our DB context ready for our application. Next, we need to connect to the database, so let's create a connection string.